Hello everybody and welcome to my brand new Magicka Nightblade build. So I know I haven't released a Magicka Nightblade build for a little while. Here it is. This is going to be worth the wait. This one's much stronger than the previous build in my opinion. It's performing very strongly in this patch. It is sort of slightly cheese to a point, but I think, to be honest, even if they nerf the cheese section of this build, you'd still be in a great spot. We're going to be sticking with our theme of a two-hander and resto. If you don't entirely understand why we're doing that, it's because it's very obnoxious to play a Magicka Nightblade while snared. It is possible, and Destro is generally going to have more overall damage in terms of sustained pressure, but two-hander has identical damage to jeweled. It is exactly the same to run two swords as it is to run a two-handed sword. I don't know if I by chance have some. I don't. Well, there you go. Just take my word on that. It is the same damage. I think you lose one spell damage overall. It's the same. They changed that a while ago. And obviously the two-hander still does give you passively the extra damage passive for 5% per sword, as you would get with jewels for the 2.5 per sword. It's the same damage to go two-hander as it is jeweled. The only thing you're losing is a set piece. We get around that by running a front bar, back bar setup with a monster set. So, a quick look at the stats. Now, disclaimer, obviously there is a lot you can change in terms of glyphs for this. I have built this for no CP battlegrounds in terms of glyphs. There's a lot of cost poisons right now in there on PCEU, and sustain is already bad. And there's also a bug going around at the moment where sustain is very difficult. There's sort of this random resource drain. A lot on the forums about that. If you want to read about that, check the forums. I don't really know all the details, but you can definitely feel it. In the future, you'd obviously be able to give up a decent amount of your recovery for spell damage, but for the time being, I'm building high on sustain. So, as follows, we are 37.5k Magicka. That doesn't sound high. Obviously, you're used to playing this fairly high, but we're getting our tankiness from one of our sets, and we're getting our damage from our sets and spell damage. Now, obviously, at the moment, our spell damage is not exceptionally high. It's going to buff to about 3k, but again, we're running a big regen set, and we have this super high regen. I'll show you the regen set in a sec. So just keep in mind, you could probably change a lot more spell damage onto this build in the future. Just while this bug is going, while we're playing a lot on OCP, I don't have that. So adjust your regen as you need. You could probably drop both regen glyphs and potentially even the reduced cost glyph that I'm running on jewelry. You'll see that in a sec. Stamina is much higher than our previous builds. We are running tri-food in this build. I have played around a lot this patch with whether clockwork food is worth it, whether we go with tri-food, and I actually think that for the way we're playing with two-hander, going with tri-food is much nicer, especially in no CP where your max stam gets eaten alive. It's nice to have a decent stam pool so that you have a decent amount of stamina for forward momentum, and I'm going to show you how we sustain that stamina in a little bit, not instantly. Health is very high, so we're going to be about 25, 26k in CP environment. I actually really like playing that. I think that there's a lot of bursty builds out there with Wizards of Post State and the smaller shield. Not that small, but smaller. It does sort of help you get around that. And our crit is going to buff pretty damn high to about 50%, so that's a really nice one to have. Crit resist is through the roof, resists barely matter, but they are just static. Stamina regen is low, as I said, we'll get to that in a sec. We are a vampire, we're using the Atronach Mundus. Again, this is a point you could drop if they fix this resource drain. You could change that to the Mage, would be my advised Mundus. But for the time being, you really want to build heavy for sustain while this bug is out there. Then we look at our sets. So our sets, we're running 5 pieces of Lich. This is on the resto bar. I do normally like Bloodthorn a fair bit. In this case, I'm going to go with Lich. And the reason we're going with Lich is because in jeweled or two-hander, or whatever melee-based Nightblade play you choose, you're generally moving in and out of the fight a lot, and you're not actually connecting attacks very much to get that added sustain. It's nice to run with something like Lich, where you're getting the regen pouring in, but you can still back off the fight and have the regen pouring in. That wants to be infused. Obviously, you can trait change now, so if you can, that's exactly what I did. I had a crap trait before. And I would suggest a Stamina Steel glyph on there. Your Magicka sustain is going to be fine, especially when they fix this bug. This just helps you get a bit of stamina sustain. It procs very often. This glyph, if you are constantly in combat, which obviously you're not going to be, but generally is worth about 300 stam regen. It's really sexy. I've been using this stamina or Magicka Steel glyph a lot on backbar infused weapons, as you would have seen in previous builds, but this is going to be what we're using on the resto staff. Front bar is then going to be Wizard of Post Day. This is going to be Nirnhoned for the damage. This is a really nice set for survivability. So although on a Nightblade you have a couple of minor main sources already, to reduce that damage. You've got Image, you've got Fear. They're not the life-saving blood that you might believe they are. Fear is only 2 targets, Image is only 1, and will have some downtime realistically. And I'm kind of going off Image a lot. I have mentioned this before. When using 4 momentum, you don't really need it to kite. You've already got good kite ability for Cloak. If you're marked, even if you have Image, you're probably going to be in trouble anyway. You're going to be in a scenario only shielding. So I have kind of gone off it for Magicblade. If I'm playing open world, there are times I do slot it, and I'll explain where I slot that later on. But I'm not using it as my minor main source. Wizard Apostate is so good for survivability, I cannot put words to it. I really advise this set on a Magicblade. And we're running a weapon and damage and spell damage on there. Where we're getting the big boy burst is our monster set. Now, I don't give a crap what people say on the forums. This is not easily countered. This set is very overtuned right now. How I would adjust this set, so basically this gives crit, and then it does as follows. When you deal damage to a nearby enemy with a light or heavy attack, you have a 20% chance to create a beam that will connect you with your enemy. This beam deals 4,400 flame damage every 1 second for 5 seconds. Every second, this damage increases by 50%. If the beam is broken, obviously we do no damage, and they just have to get out of range for that, and it has a big cooldown. The cooldown's great, the breaking is great, the damage is a bit overtuned right now. I think they should turn this down by about 10-20%. That doesn't sound like a lot for people who have taken big damage from this, but you've got to remember that gets amped up all the way through the damage. So I'd say 10-20% would probably be alright. I would see how it goes. Even if they nerf this to the ground, I would actually still say this pairs with the build perfectly, because you're playing a lot of single target pushes, and having that burst works really well. The other really nice thing is, during the downtime, you're going to be cloaked a lot anyway. So most of the time when you're going for burst, you're going to have this available. And when it procs, that is when you're going to drop an incap, you're going to fear. So you're getting that burst, and you're going to amp up things like Merciless for that moment and dump it during the proc of the Zan. So you're going to get massive burst from that. Even if it's nerfed, it will still be fine. At the moment, it does need a bit of a relook. We're running with 5-1-1, so heavy, medium, and 5 light. I like it for the extra stats. I think it does work out on the stamina. Our glyphs are all Magicka, apart from 2 of our big pieces, which are triglyphed. And on our jewelry, we are running recovery, reduced cost recovery. I explained already about that resource bug at the moment. That's why we're using those. Next, we're going to go on to our skills. So on the 2-ender bar, you're going to see very similar skill bar to previously. We're running 4 momentum. This is to get rid of snares for 8 seconds. Casting this is going to prevent you being snared. The major brutality is irrelevant. It is literally just there to get rid of snares. Conceal weapon is going to be our base damage. The tooltip goes to a little under 10k. It's about 9956, I think, fully buffed. That's without weapon glyphs. It will be over 10 with that. That's absolutely fine. Merciless is your real killer anyway with incap. You don't have to go over the top in terms of damage these days. Again, especially with that resource bug. So I would suggest trying to keep that about there. What really is nice about this skill is if you're going in from Cloak, you're going to be able to CC them. And it's a very strong CC. It's a pretty massive one. 4.6 seconds. That's a bit of a trek. And it also sets them off balance, giving you a bit of a damage buff as well. But yeah, it really is about dealing with that mobility, honestly. It's just about keeping your snare removed. It is heavenly in terms of 4 momentum, and that is how you're going to get access with Concealed Weapon. And Concealed Weapon pairs perfectly with Cloak because you then get that mobility buff. So we're very quick in this build, big burst, and that's exactly what you're after. Cloak, obviously we're going for the crit morph here. This really helps because we are going to hit them from stealth often for the first hit. Guaranteed crit, happy days. And then we've got Merciless for our burst combo. That buffs up to a little under 20k, so pretty reasonable tooltip on there. Nothing crazy, but it's fine. But it also obviously gives us minor Berserk, which gives us another 8% damage. So it all helps a lot. Incap is going to be our ulti. I know that's the stamina morph. It's still worth it. The CC, the disease on it, it's all really valuable. Getting that mage defile is so good. And again, this is another ultimate that I've always said needs a bit of a relook. I think they should remove either the CC or the defile. But hey, as long as they don't, I would suggest running this over Soul Harvest. It's still worth using. Our 5th skill then is no longer siphoning attacks. We've gone for leeching strikes. This is the stamina morph of that skill. So what this does is we cast it. It costs us a tiny bit of stamina. And then at the end of it, it's going to give us a lot of stamina back. We're also going to get stamina back on light attacks, which we're going to be doing fairly regularly. But this is just our source of stamina sustain, and this is why we're running Tri-Food. I think this works a lot better than how we previously sustained stamina, which was from set pieces or from a regen glyph. This works really nicely with this playstyle, and I really got into skill. The heal over time is also noticeable, so it's good on that front as well. Back bar, we're running Entropy, the structured morph. We want the extra health because on the front bar we have 2 shadow skills. On the back bar we only have 1. In your shadow you have a passive known as this one here, Dark Vigor, and that gives you max health each slotted. So you want to try balance it out by getting a bit more on the back bar. That's why we're on Entropy with that morph. Obviously our light attacks are not hitting that hard because it's from a stam glyph, so we want something that benefits the Magicka. Go for structured Entropy. Cripple, big boy dot, root, it's extraordinarily good. It's also your gap closer. I know there's going to be someone in the comments. When they do, please tag them with this time, because it is going to be important for them. Cripple is a gap closer, and people don't understand why that is. I'll try to find an enemy for you to show this real fast. So what we're doing with Cripple is we're going to do that, and they're going to be rooted. When they get rooted, we also get a mobility buff. So when we're in cloak, we very quickly close that gap. And that is how you want to get your gap closed. It's not worth running Lotus Fan. The damage you're getting, the snare you're getting, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to stay in range for your Zaan. So the snare is not worth it. And the damage is very poor for what it actually costs. Bread and butter, heal ward, obviously it's our survivability. Dampen, I prefer this to harness. Again, I think that on a Nightblade you only have 1 shield. It's better to make it big than get the resource return. I think it's more important personally, but if you want to run harness, of course you can. Fear is going to be our CC for players that are blocking a lot. It's still nice to have this even with concealed, because if they are blocking, you can't get that CC. It's a big problem. It's a nice way around that. And then rest ult for our heal if we are in big trouble. Though I very rarely cast this. I'm normally playing quite aggressive. Our pots are then tripods. I don't think it's worth running spell power. If you want to slot image, I would honestly advise either accepting the loss of entropy, because if you're running image, you're probably against crap players anyway, and you're not going to need it. So just use that to kite up and down. Or I would suggest dropping off your cripple. That's pretty rough to do. I don't think you really want to put image on there unless you're open world and really dealing with rubbish players, and I think the entropy is the skill to go then. But in the end, it's up to you. Adjust the skill bar and stats and sets and all as you like. This is just the build that I'm using, but it's working really well. Very consistent in Battlegrounds. Open world I haven't tried yet, but in the end, frankly, Magicka Nightblade always shines more in open world, because with cloak and things, you have more mobility, more room to play with. Next, let's move on to our CP. So our CP is very similar to the previous build, just with a bit added. We have 56 in Wall of Break Free, 3 in Sprinter. They're extra points, might as well put them somewhere fairly useful. 32 in Mooncalf, although our stamina sustained base is not that high, it is useful. Where you could also move those points is into Tenacity, but so far they are making a little difference in terms of jewels. Sometimes it's only going to give you about, I don't know, 12, 20 regen. Not a big deal, but it does sometimes make a difference. So the other place you can move them is Tenacity if you ever need to heavy attack. Personally, I never heavy attack. There's nowhere else for them to go. I shove them in there. 76 in Arcanist for the magic recovery. This is one of the only useful or very useful trees in here, so we amp it up. 40 into Tumbling for roll dodge. We're never blocking pretty much, so no point putting them in there. And 33 in Befoul. That puts you on the 39% mark on your debuff for healing. Very strong tree. Put the points in there. The blue tree then, we have 56 in Elfborn for our crit damage and crit heals, 49 Elemental Expert for the base magic damage, 39 into Spell Erosion, fairly generic, just amping up your damage pools basically, 56 Master at Arms for direct damage, 20 in Shattering. It does unlock this, which increase your light and heavy attack damage. Doesn't actually matter in the case of this, but in terms of Magicka builds, that can actually help. So I quite like this sort of tree setup on Magicka Nightblade in general. We then have 20 in Thaumaturge. We're only running 2 small dots. It's not worth amping up too much, but it does scale well, so it's worth a few points. Red Tree, finally, 56 into Ironclad for your direct damage resistance, 31 into Resistance for crit resist. That unlocks the Resilient passive. When you take crit damage, you heal for 206 health. Very strong passive. I advise that on almost every build. We then have 37 Hardy, 32 Elemental Defender, 40 Thick Skinned. If you've watched previous build videos, I suggest you do it if you play other classes or this class. pretty much always my setup to go 37, 32, 40 or 37, 32, 44. Some sort of setup like that in here. It just works really well. Unchained can be good. I just don't think it's worth the crit passives. But if you are struggling with your stamina sustain, obviously it's nice to have because it's going to save you a bit of stamina if you are CC breaking before forward momentum. So it is an option here. For me, it's just not that important. I'm fine on stamina so far. And then finally, don't touch these points. 44 in Bastion. Scales perfectly. It's very nice to increase that dampen and is going to help your survivability. Best races, don't go Argonian. You want the damage. You're going to be fine for other sources of sustain. I think High Elf is nice. Breton is nice. Adjust it as you like. Argonian is not the end of the world if you have it. Anything else is probably a bit crap. Dark Elf, not totally terrible, but not perfect. I think that covers everything, guys. Good luck with the build. I hope it works out for you. In the end, Zaan is your bread and butter for your kill here. Work around that. Time your burst, your ulti, your merciless around when your Zaan procs where possible. But you will definitely still get kills without Zaan. Your damage is fine. In cap, into merciless, into concealed, or vice versa. Mix that up. And also you can go for a stealth concealed into a merciless. Those are your big combos. Good luck with the build. Keep your shield up. Keep your forward momentum up. Keep your leech and strikes up. You'll be fine. Best of luck with the build, and I'll see you in the next video.